Hey guys, it's the MaJeliv Dad. Welcome to MaJeliv. Maybe it's your first time to this channel. Most of the things that we do here, we do as a family. As you can tell, it's just me. Very different setup. Today it's not going to be our usual reactions, reviews to movies, or commentary on things like that. We do a lot of vlogs on this channel. We just like to have a lot of fun as a family on our channel, and we love sharing that with our viewers. Today, I'm gonna do something a little different. Some of you might know that I'm actually a professional actor as well. Maybe you've seen me on some TV shows or movies, maybe you haven't. So out of the 12 years that I've been a professional actor, I've been blessed of being able to teach 11 of those years. I started teaching kids mostly, but I've also now ventured into teaching young adults and older adults who are really just trying to find either a creative outlet or a place to begin their journey as a professional actor. So I've been approached a lot on how to begin, how to start. And so today I just want to create a video for those of you that might be starting out and are starting to tackle the task of having to break down a monologue. So today I've created this video on how to break down a monologue for the screen in 20 steps. Step 1, you want to select a monologue that is age specific and type specific and about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes in length. So age specific, I mean if you're a teenager, avoid monologues that are for adults. And adults, obviously, avoid monologues that are for kids. For example, as an adult, for screen, TV type stuff, avoid monologues like, let's say, from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. That's what I mean. Make sure it's specific to your age range. That way, it's something that casting directors or agents can see you playing right now in the reel if you were to get on a set. As far as type specific, well, what is good for you in terms of what represents you in your essence, your person? Are you a professional? Are you, the romantic lead? Just be specific to who you are, your ethnicity. Those are all things to consider when you're selecting a monologue. Are you a dad or young mom? Those kinds of things. That's what I mean. To select a monologue that is fitting to your type. And the length, it's self-explanatory. Keep it short, 60 minutes, 1.5 minutes. Something that people can see quickly and decide quickly, hey, this person's got it. They get it. They're connected to the story. Minute and a half does the job. Step 2. Okay, now make sure the monologue you're selecting, whether it's dramatic or comedic, it's something you connect to. That when you read it out loud, and that's key, make sure you read it out loud to yourself, that it causes an effect in you. It causes an emotional effect. Something you, again, connect to. Something that challenges you, and it takes you out of your comfort zone. If you bring the best effort of yourself into this thing that makes you uncomfortable, you might have something really cool happen. Assuming that you've selected a monologue from a play or a movie, you want to make sure you have read the entirety of that film or seen the film at some point in your life, or the entirety of that play or seen the play. Why? Well, because you want to know the moment before and the moment after, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. And if it so happens that you don't have access to the actual script, but you found the excerpt online, you want to find maybe scenes prior to that moment in the monologue so that you have some context. The key word there being context. You want to know what's happening in this moment to your character so that when you jump into it, you're all encompassing into the circumstance that your character's going through, or else it's going to read that you don't know what you're talking about. Step 4. You read your monologue at least 10 times. But you're just going to read it, kind of like you're reading an article or a book or a social media post. You're very much an audience member at this point. You're just receiving it on a very bit of a distant kind of thing. Somewhere within those 10 times, you're just gonna feel something. You're gonna obviously connect to certain moments and certain things. Let that happen. Let that happen organically, but at least 10 times. And now I say 10 times kind of as a starting point. It could be a little less, but no less than 5 times. You definitely want to give yourself some time just reading the piece. Just read it. So you've read the monologue, right? About 10 times at least, and you've really starting to just receive a lot of it, let yourself be affected by it. So now what you want to do is you want to take the actual monologue. Maybe you found that on a website, or maybe you found it in a book and you photocopied it. Well, most often, those monologues, those copies of them have punctuation. Here, you're going to rewrite or retype the monologue without punctuation. Take it all out. You don't need it. For this step, get rid of it, okay? I personally like to write it. It's just a good exercise to start getting my body involved in the process. But you can retype it. Whatever's more efficient. You may be short on time and you gotta prepare this thing quick. I don't know what the circumstance is. Just make sure you rewrite or retype it. No punctuation. Step 6. All right, what's your character's name? At this point, you probably know that. But now I actually want you to take your pencil or pen, preferably pencil, and you go to the top of the script and write that. I am, in my case, I am Chuck. That's what I'm gonna write, because in this case, I am Chuck. I'm gonna be living as Chuck in this moment. Step 7. Who are you talking to? You gotta know that, right? Step 8. How do you feel about this person or this thing? In my case, as Chuck, if this was a bit of a monologue between myself being stranded on that island and I'm talking to Wilson, it's a thing. It's a thing that I've given life to as Chuck. It's a volleyball, and it's Wilson the volleyball, my only friend on the island. But how do I feel about Wilson? That needs to come out very clearly. So you need to know, step 7, who are you talking to? Step 8, how do you feel about that person or thing? Great. Step 9, what are you talking about? Is it important to you? How do you feel about what you're talking about? That's step 10. How do you feel about the topic that is in the moment? It could be about a person, it could be about a thing. How do you feel about it? This is the time to realize, to become aware of how you feel about all of these elements. Step 11 is a big question. What do you want? For me, as Chuck, what do I want in this moment? You have to be able to identify it. What do I want from the person that I'm talking to? What do I want from the thing that I'm talking to? There's something in this moment that I want to achieve, that I want to happen, or I want to not happen. This is one thing that is very important to know. What is the thing you are fighting for? What do you want? Step 12, determine your moment before. In other words, what happened to your character right before this moment that you're about to speak? Let's be emotionally specific about this. What happened to your character right before this moment? You've got to know how you were feeling right before you had to start opening up your mouth and expressing how you're feeling in this moment. So, for example, in my case, it's from a film. The film is Castaway, and I know that the moment before this monologue, I've just had to let go of my lifelong love, 1. 2, the only hope I had to stay alive on that island, I had to let her go, Kelly. Kelly had to be let go. And that's not an easy thing to deal with. But I know going into this monologue that my moment before emotionally as Chuck is one of heartache, of revelation, of a deeper understanding. But at the core of it, it's this deep, deep hurt and a deep realization of something that's tough to swallow. So that's important to know. If your monologue is, maybe you grabbed it from a website that it's just some monologue that somebody wrote and they didn't give you much backstory, the good news is you get to make it up. Be emotionally specific. Figure out why your character is going through what they're going through. Make it up. Be specific. Emotionally specific. Don't just say I'm sad. Don't just say I'm happy. Why? Why are you sad? Why are you happy? Be specific. Figure out the environment. Figure out the elements that affect you the moment before you start speaking. Step 13. What is your emotional preparation? Now, maybe you've never heard that before. Maybe you have. If you studied anything about Sanford Meisner, emotional preparation is important to the moment before. It's important before your very first action, before your very first line. It's part of that as I walk into this moment, or as I sit into this moment. What's my emotional preparation? Which is to say, as the actor, how am I going to align with what Chuck is feeling? Well, there's very personal things that I could do. Apart from Chuck's imaginary circumstance, there's very personal things that I can do in private that will help me get to that deep, deep hurt that Chuck is going through. Or if in your case, it's a deep, deep joy that you're going through, figure out in your own private moment, what is it that stimulates you in that way, that brings you to an emotional state that matches what your character is going through, and that's your jumping off point. What is your first action? Now keep in mind, at this point, you know how you feel. You know how Jose, the actor, is now aligned with how Chuck feels right before this moment begins. So again, no line of dialogue. This is just some of that pre-life, that moment before. But now, as it begins, what's your first action? Determining that actually helps you determine your very first beat, which I call the beginning beat. And you want to write that down as your first action. For example, as Chuck, my first action is to yield. After all that time on the island, after waiting and waiting for my long lost love, would I ever see her again? I have to yield. So that first moment is to yield, to give in. And from there, things get really interesting. Step 15, find your middle and end beat. And remember, a beat is a moment that you are grabbing a thought, you're taking a breath. It's a natural moment where you need to refocus or recharge to continue with what you're saying, to continue getting what you want, or to continue yielding to this thing that's before you. So in my case, for Chuck, there's moments where I have to confess. That's a shift. I go from recollecting and yielding to confessing. That would be like my middle beat. My end beat is a resolve, to have a sense of resolve, a sense of motivation, right? To edify. In this case, I'm speaking to my best friend who has given me time and space to deal with what I'm dealing with. So my end beat for Chuck is a sense of, I'm gonna be okay. I'm assuring him, I'm assuring myself. So those are examples of middle and end beat. So step 15, find that middle and find that end beat that puts the whole thing together. Step 16. This is where things get intentionally boring. You're gonna learn your lines mechanically. That is to say, very much like a robot. You're gonna take out all of the emotion. This is definitely something I learned from Sanford Meisner's book, from some of my acting classes. At first, it's something that doesn't seem to make sense. But the goal here is to make yourself as emotionally neutral to the piece. It helps with memorization. It is a bit of a memorization device, but it sounds like this. Again, the emphasis here is to be neutral, to really hit the syllables like a robot. For example, we both had done the math, Kelly added it all up, and she had to let me go, I added it up, and so on and so forth. And then you could always break those up into sections. We both had done the math, we both had done the math. And we'll talk more about this eyes down, eyes up on a later step. But step 16, learn your lines mechanically. Emotionless is the goal. Step 17, it's now time to put the mechanical device to action. I mentioned in step 16 that you would be looking down, saying the line mechanically, then looking up to an eye line and saying the line mechanically there. You're gonna do that 3 times. That's 3 times going through the whole monologue, saying it like a robot. For example, we both had done the math. We both had done the math. Kelly added it all up and we knew. Kelly added it up and we knew. So you're going to do that until you get through the whole piece. The moment you get through the whole piece, that's once. You're gonna do it again, that'll be your second time. And you're gonna do it again, and that'll be your third time. It seems tedious, but what you're doing, not only are you memorizing, but you're also allowing the words to become neutral. You're giving fertile ground for emotion, which we will then discuss later, to just blossom through you as you start going for these actions. Keep that in mind. The goal here is neutral on the words. For step 18, our goal here is to determine what is this moment about? What is this whole thing, this scene, this moment? Yes, I am hinting at, let's talk about emotions. Yeah? Now I'm not saying play emotions, absolutely not. Just become aware of, now we're adding emotions again to neutral words. If step 17 helped us establish a neutral state for the words, step 18 is helping us to revisit the ways we were feeling when we were reading through the piece 10 times. Is this a confession monologue? Am I confronting somebody? Am I apologizing? Am I pleading for something? So establish what's going on. In my case, this monologue is a sense of rebirth, a sense of reawakening, a sense of looking at myself from a whole new angle, waking up to a new beginning. Any of those fit. It's just having an awareness of what is this whole thing about? The overall arching way to describe this moment, maybe in one or two words, just as I gave you an example. So step 18 requires a little bit of more sitting with it. What is this moment about? How would you describe it? You should know in just a few words. Step 19. Now, step 19 is very, very connected to step 11, which has everything to do with, what do you want? As Chuck, what do I want in this moment? What am I going for? Why am I sitting in this space? Why am I having this conversation with my friend? What do I want? Step 11 is, what do I want? Step 19 is, well, what happens if I don't get what I want? What are the stakes? What happens to Chuck, to me, if I don't allow myself to truly begin again? What happens if I don't retrace my steps and let my friends see that I've not lost all hope? That being stranded on an island hasn't destroyed me. Having lost my love, the love of my life, hasn't destroyed me. So, what are the stakes? Step 19. What are you going to lose if you don't get what you want? You have to write it down, you have to feel it, you have to know it, so that you know what are the stakes. Step 20. Now that we're starting to add all these layers of emotional awareness through the piece, remember those beats we established? Your beginning beat, your middle, and your end? Well, now you're going to go back to those beats, and you're going to assign actions. Things to do, verbs, and they're completely connected to what it is you want to achieve. What do you want this person or thing to do? Well, you're going to get them to do it. How? You're going to do something. You're going to scare them, threaten them, terrify them, uplift them, motivate them, reveal yourself to them. So those are all examples of things you could do in the beginning beat. Remember, my beginning beat was to yield, to give in. So I'm also revealing of myself. So those are two actions already in the first beat, to yield and to reveal. You're also going to put a third action, and it's an opposite action. If my other two actions are to yield and to reveal, my third one could be to hide, to conceal. And again, this is all in relation to who I'm talking to. In my monologue as Chuck, I'm talking to my friend, and I want him to see me yield. I want him to feel that I'm revealing something about myself. But then the third action is I'm also hiding something. I'm concealing the deep, deep hurt, perhaps. Again, this is your beginning beat that you've now assigned 3 things to. You're going to do the same thing for the middle and end beat, assigning 2 actions that are relevant and directly going to benefit your want, and then one opposite action that doesn't really help you get what you want, but it gives you a sense of a different angle, a different action to what you're doing and saying. For example, if your want for your monologue is to get this person to go out on a date with you, your beats that you can add anywhere in there to your monologue, it could be the beginning beat or the middle beat, are, the first one could be to impress, to flirt with. Those 2 actions are relevant actions to the want, which is I want this person to date me, so I'm going to flirt with them, I'm going to impress them. And then the third action is an opposite. So what would actually not be beneficial? Maybe like creeping them out, being too much of a creep, being a little bit too pushy, right? So that could be a third action, creeping out, or being too honest up front right away. That's a third separate different action. Now, if you think about it, you now have assigned 3 actions for your first beat, your beginning beat, 3 actions for your middle beat, and 3 actions for your end beat. Now you have assigned 3 actions per beat. So you now have 9 different ways of doing this monologue, a sense of direction as to how to get up on your feet and do a run through. And now you're ready to jump up on your feet. It's your first run through. So for your run through, you may want to grab a stool or a chair, or a point on the wall and make that your definitive eye line for the person you're talking to. Now earlier we talked about an eye line just for the mechanical movement, right? Never do that to a mirror. Please never ever rehearse or run through whatever word you want to use. Just do not, please do not look into a mirror. At least that does not work for me. All that does is put me more in my head about what I look like and am I being effective? It makes it too much about me. And this, like any scene work, you should be here in this moment, again, affecting the person or thing in front of you. So for your run through, hey, again, congratulations, 20 steps are done, but now you gotta get up. We're standing up and we're gonna connect and we're gonna start just going through the actions that we've written down. So my first one was to yield, right? So my first way of doing this whole piece is yielding. So what does that look like? The whole of it is just gonna be the sense of, this is just my life now. Awesome. And I'm gonna go through the whole monologue with that one action. When I'm done with it, and again, it's only a minute and a half probably. When I get through with it, I'm gonna come back and do it with my second action, which, if you recall, it is to reveal. So for this second go, I'm gonna reveal of my heart, and I am gonna exaggerate each action just a bit, as if I'm doing it on a theater, live, performing it on a stage. That's an option to get the motion and the action physically fill the space with this kind of approach. And you're gonna go through with that 9 times, 9 different actions. That's your run through. Once you're done, remember, you've got this thing in a position where it's ready for performance. Hopefully at that point, you've got it memorized, not just line by line, it's living in you, and you can maybe have someone stand in the room if a family member or a friend or a trusted artist can stand in and just let you run through it. Remember that the goal with doing it 9 different ways is that you can do it any way that it could possibly arise in you naturally. That's the goal. That this thing lives in you, and it's going to come out different every time you do it. So that if you do it for an agent, it's gonna come out one way, but it's gonna come out truthfully from where you are. If you're gonna do it for a casting director at a showcase, the monologue is gonna live differently than it did that last time. It should never be the same way all the time, because your environment is gonna change. My monologue is gonna be different if I'm in an office talking to a casting director, or if I'm doing it here to the camera, or if I'm doing it on a set. It should always have a breathability and a sense of organic life to it. And in order to get there, these guidelines, these steps help. All of this is just meant to help you, to suggest a possible way to keep your instincts alive, to keep them free without you getting stuck to one way of doing it. I hope this helps. If you need a little bit more information as to how I approach stuff like this or scene work, my website is below. Look at the description. There's a way to send me an email. We can connect and talk more. Maybe there's something you're preparing for. Maybe this time of the world pandemic has you just wanting to be more specific about the work you're doing. Feel free to contact me. I want to give a special thank you to my beginnings in Orlando, Florida. I started my very first acting class with Rus Blackwell. Amazing actor, amazing teacher. Thank you, Rus. A big thank you to Artseg Acting Studio and Class X Studios. Those were my initial playground, guys, and a lot of what I continue to do with my work came from there. And now I'm sharing it with you because I know these are tough times. And maybe not everybody can get to a class. So please, take this, use it as best as you can. It is just one video, and it might just give you enough to get you started. But if that's what it does, then great. And if you need more, hey, you know where I'm at. I'm here. This is MaJeliv. We do all kinds of fun stuff, but we also do this. And as artists, we want to help other artists, especially young actors who are just trying to get this thing started. And it can be very daunting and it can be very overwhelming. So I hope these 20 steps make it a little bit easier and gives you a sense of a place to begin. After that, hey, make it your own. Find your own way to do this. That's the beauty of this art, that you get to find more about you and your way to approach how to bring stories and characters to life. Thanks again for tuning in, and stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.